Hello, my name is Josh Putka, and this audio recording is a brief synopsis or summary of the research that I did this past summer here at WIT. And so the title of my research is Developing a Laboratory Activity to Explore Synergy Between Traditional Antibiotics and Essential Oils. Now, again, this research took place over this past summer while I was at Wittenberg. And really what we were doing was looking to develop a laboratory activity or procedure that could be done in something like a microbiology class at other undergraduate universities to allow students to look into the potential synergistic relationships between antibiotics, traditional antibiotics, and essential oils. And so this procedure accomplishes two main things. First of all, it helps educate people on both the problem of antibiotic resistance and then also helps them move forward and look for new solutions to this problem. Because ultimately antibiotic resistance and antibiotic resistant infections are becoming increasingly more of a threat. And so this research goes a long way towards, again, educating people on that and then also looking for new solutions. And so in doing so, this research, the methods were testing the minimum inhibitory concentration of both antibiotics and essential oils. And so looking at our methods here, that's what our first two blocks are. Those are kind of the methods we used in order to test the different minimum inhibitory concentration, the MIC values. And the procedures are, as a poster says, very similar between testing antibiotics and essential oils. And then in order to look at what the results are, there were two different ways that we did that. We would either look visually, and sometimes the tubes would be cloudy versus transparent. So if they're still transparent, there's no bacteria. If they're cloudy, there's obviously bacteria in them. There are some solutions, especially once you get to the essential oils, that create very cloudy solutions. In that case, we would use the pellet test as described on the poster as well. And so once we get all that data, then we can test synergy between the two. And really what we're looking for is we're using the equation down at the bottom, and I have an example of, what a synergy array would look like. But really what we're looking for is, so that 0.25 row and column, so where it's 1/4 the MIC of antibiotic and 1/4 the MIC of essential oil, that is where we first can see synergy. And so that's really, so there's 10 tubes for each test, and really the most important one is that 1/4 tube. And so I have listed kind of the MIC values that I narrowed down over the summer, and then I have also an example of one of our synergy tests. And I think this one is really important to showcase because it looks a little bit different from the theoretical one. And that's because on the menthol side, we're actually down to 1/8 and 1/16 MIC. And so this shows this relationship between kanamycin and menthol is actually very potent. We're seeing at 1/16 the concentration of menthol and then 1/4 the concentration of kanamycin that we're still seeing no bacterial growth. And so that shows a very strong synergistic effect between these two. But that's not the only example of synergy that we see or that I saw this past summer. The other two tables there in our results show that there are actually many examples of synergy between antibiotics and essential oils, and that's actually not something that we were necessarily expecting to see going into the summer. We also have that question mark in ampicillin, so I'm actually still conducting a few tests here to narrow down some of the values. But ultimately, the conclusions from the summer are that there are many examples of synergy between traditional antibiotics and essential oils, and again that the synergy between kanamycin and menthol is particularly strong. And also we see that there are some differences. So the E. coli is a gram-negative bacteria. Staph epidermidis is going to be gram-positive. So there are some differences between the synergistic profiles between gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. And so that's kind of a slightly, maybe longer than I expected, but a short synopsis of my research. And when I'm actually presenting this coming Friday, I am happy to talk about it in more depth and detail. Thank you.